The dropship cut through the thin atmosphere, its matte black hull absorbing the weak light of the distant star. Inside, Vale Kor stood motionless, arms crossed behind his back, golden eyes scanning the mission briefing one last time. His mandibles twitched in amusement as he read the details. Humans. Primitive, short-lived, and prone to self-destruction. The Zelkar Dominion had only recently taken an interest in the species, and already their analysts had deemed them insignificant in the grand scale of galactic affairs. Vale Kor agreed. He had seen their crude projectile weapons, their reliance on terrain and deception rather than precision and technology. They were not warriors in the true sense. They were scavengers, improvisers, creatures who thrived not through discipline but through unpredictability. And yet, despite their inferiority, they had survived long enough to carve out a place among the stars. That, at least, warranted observation. The ship jolted as it entered the final descent, skimming the treetops of an endless mountain range. The mission was simple: infiltrate an isolated military outpost, assess their defensive capabilities, and neutralize key personnel to determine how effectively human forces responded to precision strikes. A test. A game, really. One that Vale Kor had played on dozens of worlds and won every time. The ramp hissed open, cold mountain air rushing in. Snow dusted the treetops, the scent of wet earth filling his nostrils. He leapt soundlessly onto the rocky terrain, his armor shifting to match the surrounding environment. A shimmer passed over his form as his active camouflage engaged, bending light around him until he was little more than a ghost. He moved swiftly, weaving between gnarled pines, his steps light despite his towering frame. The human outpost lay nestled against a sheer cliffside a few kilometers away, a modest installation of reinforced structures and defensive emplacements. Crude, but functional. He had studied their patterns from intercepted transmissions, night patrols every 40 minutes, sentries stationed along the ridgeline, a single sniper positioned in the southern watchtower. That one interested him most. A sniper. Humans had always placed an odd reverence on the practice, glorifying lone marksmen who could end lives from distances unseen. Vale Kor had no use for such methods. A true warrior met his enemy face to face, tested their strength in battle. There was no honor in killing from the shadows. Still, he supposed he would humor them. The first guard never saw him coming. A flicker of movement, a whisper of displaced air, and then silence. Vale Kor caught the body before it could collapse, easing it to the ground before vanishing once more into the night. He pressed forward, avoiding the pools of artificial light that flickered from crude lamps along the perimeter. His HUD tracked movement patterns, predicting their shifts with mechanical precision. It was almost disappointing how little effort it required. Ahead, the main barracks loomed, a squat, armored structure with reinforced plating. A challenge, but not an obstacle. He scaled the side effortlessly, claws digging into metal, reaching the roof within seconds. From here, he had an unobstructed view of the entire outpost. He activated his communicator. Phase 1 complete. No resistance of note. A response crackled through his earpiece, his handler's voice sharp and clinical. Understood. Proceed with target elimination. Vale Kor's gaze flicked toward the sniper's nest. A lone figure stood within, rifle resting against the ledge, scanning the darkness with practiced patience. He hesitated, curiosity flickering in his mind. Unlike the others, this human did not seem distracted or careless. There was a stillness to him, a quiet focus that set him apart. Interesting. He adjusted his position, preparing to disable the sniper before moving on to the officers inside. One clean strike. Silent. Efficient. It was the logical approach. Then the sniper moved. Not much, just a slight shift in weight, a minute adjustment of his rifle's angle. But it was enough. A warning flared in Vale Kor's mind. He dropped an instant before the shot rang out. A projectile hissed through the space where his head had been, embedding itself into the rooftop with a dull thud. For the first time in years, Vale Kor felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Surprise. He rolled into cover, scanning the tree-line. The sniper wasn't in the tower anymore. Impossible. He had been watching. Another shot, this one even closer, clipping the edge of his armor before he twisted away. He activated his cloaking field again, but something told him it wouldn't matter. This human wasn't aiming at where he was. He was aiming at where he was going to be. Veilcore exhaled slowly, tension coiling in his muscles. Perhaps this wouldn't be a game after all. The wind howled through the mountain pass, cutting through the trees like a living thing. Snowflakes drifted lazily in the air, illuminated by the cold glow of distant floodlights. Veilcore crouched against a jagged outcrop of rock, his golden eyes scanning the ridgeline. The sniper had vanished. No movement, no sound. Just the lingering echo of a gunshot and the knowledge that, for the first time in his career, he had been marked. His armor's cloaking field shimmered around him, adjusting to the terrain. A lesser opponent would have taken comfort in the technology, believing it made them untouchable. Veilcore knew better now. This human, this sniper, had fired at him not once, but twice, each shot closer than the last. Not luck. Not coincidence. Calculated precision. A test, then. He activated his communicator with a subvocal command. Enemy sniper detected. Position unknown. Adjusting approach. The response was immediate. Copy. Ranger. Proceed with caution. Terminate the target if necessary. If necessary. The words amused him. It was always necessary. The human had already proven himself dangerous, far more than any of the others who lay unconscious or dying in the snow below. But there was something else, something that made Veilcore hesitate. Curiosity. He moved swiftly, navigating the uneven terrain with practiced ease. Every step was measured, careful. The sniper had forced him to reassess his strategy, to abandon his usual path of swift, decisive infiltration. He was now the hunted as much as the hunter. A flicker of movement. A shadow against the trees. Veilcore stilled, pressing himself against the rock face. His thermal scanners pulsed, sweeping the area. Nothing. No heat signature, no trace of human presence. But the feeling remained, a weight pressing against his instincts. The sniper was still out there. Watching. A normal human soldier would have repositioned by now, seeking higher ground or additional cover. But this one had disappeared, as if the mountains themselves had swallowed him whole. Veilcore's mandibles tightened. He had underestimated his opponent once. He would not do so again. He moved lower, using the terrain to his advantage. Snow crunched beneath his boots, a sound almost lost to the wind. He adjusted his route, circling toward the command center from the east rather than the direct approach he had initially planned. It was slower, but safer. Then, another gunshot. The impact sent a sharp jolt through his armor, forcing him to pivot mid-step. The bullet had grazed his shoulder, enough to throw him off balance but not penetrate. He dropped low, rolling behind a fallen log, eyes scanning the darkness. A silhouette against the ridge, just for a fraction of a second before it was gone. Veilcore exhaled slowly. The shot had not been meant to kill. If the sniper had wanted him dead, he would have aimed for the head, the neck, the weak points in his armor. No, this was a warning. A message. I see you. He bared his fangs, an unfamiliar thrill running through him. It had been too long since he had faced a challenge like this. Fine. If the human wanted to play, he would oblige. Veilcore activated a small drone, sending it upward into the night sky. It moved silently, scanning the ridge with advanced optics, searching for heat, movement, anything. But as the feed came back, he saw nothing. The sniper had already moved. Smart. He pushed forward, weaving between the trees, keeping low. The mission was still his priority. The sniper was a threat, but not the objective. His true target lay within the compound, officers whose elimination would cripple human response times in this region. If he wasted too much time, the outpost would go on high alert, and the game would be over before it truly began. Still, the thought lingered in his mind. The sniper had him in his sights, had fired, and yet had not taken the kill. Was it arrogance? A challenge? Or something else entirely? 100 meters from the outpost, he stopped. A strange stillness had settled over the forest, as if the very air was holding its breath. Something was wrong. He scanned the perimeter. Guards moved in careful patrols, unaware of the battle playing out beyond their walls. Everything seemed as it should be. And yet, that feeling remained. Then he saw it. A small, almost imperceptible glint of metal nestled between the branches of a tree. A decoy. A reflection meant to draw his attention, to bait him into revealing himself. A trap. The sniper wasn't just watching. He was planning. Anticipating. Veilcore felt a rare flicker of admiration. He adjusted his route once more, circling even wider. If the sniper wanted him to move one way, he would move the other. The human was skilled, but so was he. Another shot rang out, but this one was different. It struck the ground near his feet, kicking up snow and ice, forcing him to react. His instincts screamed at him to dive for cover, but he resisted. No, this was exactly what the sniper wanted. Instead, he pressed forward. The wind roared, the mountains stretched endlessly before him, and somewhere in the darkness, the sniper watched. The wind had shifted. It carried the scent of pine and frost, but beneath it, something sharper, gunpowder, disturbed earth, the subtle traces of a battlefield unfolding between two unseen adversaries. Veilcore moved with deliberate care, his steps nearly silent against the snow-laden ground. The sniper had not fired again, but that did not mean he was gone. If anything, the absence of gunfire was more concerning. This was no longer a simple mission. It had become a contest, a battle of patience and skill between two hunters who understood the importance of the unseen. Veilcore had always relied on superior technology, on stealth fields and predictive algorithms. But the human? He had nothing but instincts and experience, and somehow that had been enough to keep them evenly matched. He exhaled slowly, shifting his stance as he moved toward the tree-line. He needed to regain control, to dictate the pace of the hunt. His opponent had forced him into a defensive posture, reacting rather than acting. That would not do. The first step was misdirection. Veilcore reached to his belt, retrieving a small device no larger than his palm. A decoy beacon. He pressed his thumb against its surface, setting it to mimic movement. With a flick of his wrist, he sent it tumbling through the snow toward a cluster of rocks. It triggered instantly, projecting a subtle shimmer, an illusion of motion, a figure just barely visible in the periphery of vision. Not perfect, but good enough to draw fire. The shot came a second later. Sharp, precise, cutting through the cold air with lethal intent. The decoy flared and died, but the purpose had been served. Veilcore had his answer. The sniper was still here. He launched forward, covering the distance in seconds. No more hesitation. No more caution. He vaulted over the rocks, closing the gap before his enemy could reposition. Then he saw him. A silhouette crouched against the ridgeline, rifle raised, adjusting for the next shot. The sniper had seen through the decoy faster than expected, but it had still bought Veilcore the time he needed. He lunged. The human reacted instantly, rolling to the side, the rifle swinging up in a single, fluid motion. A shot rang out, grazing Veilcore's shoulder, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He reached forward, claws flashing in the dim light, aiming to disarm. The sniper twisted, using Veilcore's momentum against him. A sharp impact to the side, a shift in balance, and suddenly Veilcore found himself on his back, the human already moving, already aiming. Fast. Too fast. He barely had time to roll before another shot struck where his head had been. Snow kicked up, obscuring the view for a split second, just enough for Veilcore to regain his footing. The human had abandoned the rifle now, drawing a sidearm, keeping him in his sights. His stance was steady, breath-controlled. Not a trace of fear in his eyes. Veilcore exhaled, mandibles tightening in something close to satisfaction. "I underestimated you." His voice was low, edged with something unfamiliar. "Respect." The sniper said nothing. Not a word. Not a flicker of emotion. Just those steady eyes, watching, calculating. Veilcore moved first. A blur of motion, closing the distance before another shot could be fired. The human fired twice, but he was already inside the effective range, knocking the weapon aside. The fight turned brutal. The sniper struck first, a quick jab toward the throat. Veilcore deflected, countering with a sweeping strike aimed at unbalancing his opponent. The human dodged, pivoting with practiced ease. This was not the clumsy brawling of an untrained soldier. Every move had purpose, every step carefully placed. The fight stretched on, a rapid exchange of blows and counters, neither able to gain the upper hand. Veilcore had strength, speed, but the sniper had experience, adaptability. Then, a shift. The human feinted left, drawing Veilcore's defense in that direction, before snapping forward with a precise strike aimed at the jaw. It connected. A mistake. Veilcore caught the arm before the human could pull back, twisting sharply, forcing him to the ground. He moved to pin, claws pressing against fabric and armor. For the first time, the sniper spoke. "Do it." 2 simple words. A challenge, not a plea. Veilcore hesitated. His grip tightened for a fraction of a second. Then, slowly, he released it. The sniper didn't move. For a long moment, they simply stared at one another. Warriors caught in the space between battle and something unspoken. Veilcore exhaled, stepping back. "You are not what I expected." Neither was he. The hunt had turned both ways, and now neither could claim victory. The silence between them stretched, heavy with the weight of unspoken understanding. The wind stirred the snow in slow, twisting spirals, whispering through the trees like ghosts of long-forgotten battles. Veilcore stood motionless, golden eyes locked onto the human who had, against all odds, bested him in single combat. The sniper remained on the ground where he had fallen, but there was no fear in his expression, no tension in his muscles. He was waiting. Veilcore considered his options. He could end it now, fulfill his mission, eliminate the last true threat standing between him and the outpost. It would be the logical choice. Efficient. Clean. Yet something held him back. The sniper had earned his respect. That alone was rare. Slowly, the human sat up, brushing snow from his fatigues. He made no move for his discarded sidearm, nor did he attempt to retreat. Instead, he studied Veilcore with the same cold calculation he had displayed from the moment their battle began. "You're hesitating." The voice was quiet, rough, edged with exhaustion but steady. Veilcore did not respond immediately. Words felt unnecessary. The sniper exhaled through his nose, a short, sharp breath. "If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already." Veilcore tilted his head slightly. "Perhaps." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, with slow, deliberate motions, the sniper reached to his belt, producing a small knife. He turned it in his palm before driving the blade into the frozen ground between them. A gesture of something unspoken. Not surrender. Something else. Veilcore watched, intrigued. This human did not behave as expected. "You're hunting my people," the sniper said finally, voice low. "I was hunting you." A pause. "Seems we both failed." Veilcore's mandibles twitched in something close to amusement. "Or succeeded." The sniper's lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. For the first time, Veilcore allowed himself to truly study the man before him. The sniper was lean, hardened by war and survival, his features marked with old scars. His eyes, though human, carried the same sharpness Veilcore had seen in veteran warriors of his own kind. A man who had seen death many times and walked away each time colder, sharper. There was no doubt in Veilcore's mind. This human was dangerous. Not because of his weapon, nor his training, but because he understood the art of the hunt as deeply as any Zelkar warrior. And yet, he had not taken the kill shot when given the chance. Just as Veilcore had not. The wind shifted again, carrying distant voices from the outpost. The humans were mobilizing. If he stayed too long, extraction would become complicated. The sniper must have realized it too. "They'll be looking for me soon." Veilcore nodded. "Then we must decide." The sniper didn't ask what he meant. He already knew. They had reached the precipice of something rare. A battle that had no true victor, no clear conclusion. Killing each other now would serve no purpose beyond pride. The sniper reached into his vest, pulling out a small device. He tossed it to Veilcore without ceremony. "Coordinates. A better fight. Not today. But soon." Veilcore caught it effortlessly, studying the numbers on the screen. A challenge. A promise. His mandibles curled in approval. Without another word, the sniper stood, collecting his discarded rifle and sidearm. He did not look back as he disappeared into the snow and shadows, vanishing as seamlessly as he had appeared. Veilcore remained still for a long moment, considering what had just transpired. Then, with a final glance toward the coordinates in his hand, he turned and faded into the mountains, the hunt unfinished but far from over. The transport's engines hummed softly as Veilcore sat in the dim glow of the cabin, his golden eyes fixed on the datapad in his hands. The mission report was complete, concise, factual, absent of the nuances that had made this encounter unlike any before. It detailed the infiltration, the sniper, the unexpected stalemate. Nowhere did it mention the hesitation, the challenge left unspoken between two predators who had tested each other and found something worth acknowledging. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. His ship drifted silently through the void, heading toward the fleet stationed beyond the human territories. Soon, he would be debriefed, his superiors would dissect every detail, and strategies would be adjusted accordingly. But something had shifted within him. He had faced countless enemies across countless battlefields. Humans, until now, had been little more than an inconvenience, resourceful, stubborn, but ultimately outmatched. This mission should have reinforced that belief. Instead, it had shattered it. The sniper had not just fought him. He had hunted him, anticipated his moves, forced him to adapt in ways no other human had before. Veilcore turned his gaze back to the coordinates stored in the device the sniper had given him. A meeting place. A promise of another hunt. Not as enemies, but as equals. The door to the cabin slid open with a quiet hiss, and another warrior stepped inside. Kether, a fellow ranger, his expression unreadable. "You encountered resistance." Veilcore nodded. "A single human." Kether scoffed. "They grow desperate." Veilcore met his gaze. "No. They grow dangerous." For a moment, Kether said nothing. Then he frowned. "The reports claim their tactics are primitive. Predictable." Veilcore placed the device on the table between them. This one was not. Kether studied the coordinates, his brow ridges drawing together. "You let him live." Veilcore's mandibles twitched in something that was not quite a smile. "I did." A heavy silence settled between them. Veilcore could see the unspoken question in Kether's posture, the quiet challenge in his stance. But he did not elaborate, nor did he justify his actions. There was nothing to explain. Finally, Kether exhaled sharply and stepped back. "Command will want a full debriefing." "I am aware." Kether hesitated at the door. "And when they ask why you let the human go?" Veilcore leaned back in his seat, the weight of the sniper's gaze still lingering in his mind. "I will tell them the truth." Kether considered this, then nodded once and left. Alone again, Veilcore picked up the coordinates, running a clawed finger over the surface. He had no orders to return to human territory. No directive to seek out this sniper again. And yet, he knew he would. Because this was no longer just a war. It was a hunt. A test. And he would not walk away from it unfinished.